TO plays.
Hey there, this is Tio, bringing another Kerbal Space Program video from my career mode demo series. In the last video, I launched my first station to the moon, so this time I'm going to go ahead and use that station somehow. And as always, I like to start by looking at my contracts to see what I've done and what I still have to do. So, see science data from the space around Minmus, planting the flag on Minmus. I know I picked those up because I plan to go to Minmus very soon. Rescuing Hudme from the orbit of Kerbal, bringing some greenstone back with me, which is another Minmus mission, and gathering surface deployed mystery goo observation science from the surface of the Mun. So hopefully the mystery goo unit that I've recently put on the Mun is going to help me accomplish this mission. 3 of those are going to Minmus, and then one's a rescue mission around Kerbal. So I'm not super worried about any of those just yet. Maybe do the rescue mission pretty soon. Exploring Minmus, since I've already got 3, should I get a 4th mission? Let's see. I've only got room for 2 more missions, I believe. 2 more contracts. I think there's 5 out of 7. So performing a spacewalk in orbits, go on an orbital spacewalk, transfer any crew between vessels near Minmus. So that's going to be. I don't want this contract to disappear. Oh, for expires, yeah. So a lot of these do expire. So I will take it. Science data from the surface of the Mun. I know I'm going to land on the Mun pretty soon, so I'll be doing that one. I must have upgraded my building all the way because it's not showing me 7 out of 7. I suspect I have options. I can select all of these contracts. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up planting the flag as well because I'm going back to the Mun. Might as well. Building a new orbital station around Eve. Wow, that's how it encourages you to branch out and try new things. I'm not ready for Eve in this career mode, so I'm gonna leave that there. It's gonna expire. No big deal. Eventually, it'll give me other missions for other more appropriate planets. For instance, I think Duna is going to be the first planet that you'd ever want to visit in a career mode. So I'll leave these others as they are. Got 2 new contracts for the moon. Plan on going back to the Mun anyway. So let's go ahead and leave. Head over to the vehicle assembly building. So basically, I just need to send a scientist to the orbital station around the Mun for it to be functional. But since I'm going to make a trip, might as well make the most of it. So I need a few things added to the station. And I think the first most utilitarian thing would be a giant fuel tank. I've got some other options of other things that I can send, but might as well send my fuel tank first. So I'll be sending a scientist and a fuel tank. So for my scientist, he's obviously not a pilot, so I'll need a probe core. Since I need to send something that sits a Kerbal that would fit a Kerbal, might as well send something that's functional, such as a re-entry vehicle, so like an escape vehicle. So in a career mode, nothing tends to go wrong that would require you to use it. But for the sake of realism and for having some fun, I'll send a vehicle that would serve as an escape pod for the moon station. And I'll put my scientist in that escape pod and send them there. So for that, I'll send I think it's the pomegranate, the pod that seats 3. And I tend to snap all my accessories to the top of the pomegranate, and they'll re-enter the atmosphere with me. So I've got my probe core in there. What else would I need? I would need a battery. Yeah, good. I got a little one. Go ahead and snap the little one to the top of the probe core. Doesn't hurt. Clip it a little bit. What else? I need a means of producing electricity, and for that I can put it on my tank for my return vehicle. I'll swap this out and see if I need any more fuel than that. So these standard stationary panels will suffice. And honestly, just 4 of them would probably suffice, but I'll put 6 so that at least 1 or 2 of them will always catching some rays. Ordinarily, I'd like to put a parachute on the top, but in this case, I will need docking port so that I can dock with the station. And what else? What's some other essentials? So I'm coming back to Kerbal with this. I would need parachutes. So I go to my utility, with the larger blue parachutes. I suspect 3 would suffice. This is the door. So that's the door, radial, 3 symmetry. I'll put it like that so that it splits the difference and nothing is blocking the door. Now, these should not block the docking port. Technically, I could increase it a little bit if I wanted to. Makes it look a little strange, but the only thing I don't like about the structural tubes is you can see inside of it like that. I guess if it bothered me an awful lot, I could use one of these adapters. Adds a little weight, makes it look a little better though, so I might as well. And I'll also clip a little bit so you can't even see where they meet. So long as I'm not blocking the door, that'll be fine. I don't know how aerodynamic this is going to be coming in. So long as there's not a lot of weight in this, it shouldn't matter. And I think because my battery is snapped down there, my probe core is snapped down there, the heat shield on the bottom of the pomegranate should still take the brunt of the re-entry. Alright, so I've got a power source, way to re-enter the atmosphere. I'm not putting any radial chutes. I don't think I'll need any of those. That should be good. Only other thing I could add, and I could probably add it to the lower section, would be some monopropellant, some thrusters, and maybe a control wheel. Keep calling them control wheels. Reaction wheels. So add a few little tanks, clip them so they look a little nicer. Need to also decide what method of propulsion I will use. The Spark is not as efficient as the Terrier, but it is lighter. For smaller vehicles, the Spark does work pretty well. 692 meters per second should be plenty to get back from the Mun. 202, probably not enough to get back from the Mun, from the orbit of the Mun. So I could either increase my fuel tank or put a Spark on it. So Spark it'll be. Not going to be the fastest escape from the Mun station. In the event of an emergency, it'll sputter away, but it'll get the job done. And then definitely need the thrusters, and definitely I'll just stick it there for now. Would like a control wheel. The probe cores tend to have control wheels in them, but they're not always strong enough to help you maneuver quickly. I don't need to clip the battery now that I've got a whole lot of space in there. Although I could clip all of those things into the pomegranate, again, just to move my mass. I don't want to re-enter the atmosphere with the docking port facing the heat. And if I clip that a little, oh no, it would actually be the tube itself. That's too much. That's enough. Alright, perfect. That's all the clipping I need to do. So I'll put my port back. Now I can see my center of gravity. Nope, not thrust. Sorry, gravity. And let's grab my RCS thrusters. Well, the good news is my mass would be way down there. So when I re-enter, it should be re-entering correctly. Bad news is I will need 2 sets of thrusters because I can't put them here. I don't know if they need to be rotated to face it correctly. Let's see. I'll experiment. I'll put them there. Normally I wouldn't. Normally I'd put a set up here and a set down here and split and put them equidistance. But in this case, I will try to put them just there. But for my sanity, I will also rotate them so that they're facing straight. Now I don't know how these behave. I guess technically it does look like the thruster is clearing the pod. If you were to clip these into the pod, I think they still function correctly. I don't think clipping alters the behavior of the thruster. That looks like it's pretty well centered on the center of gravity. I guess technically I could come down here. And they're all facing the correct orientation. So they're not blocking the door. Check, check, check. So there's my escape pod. Go ahead and save it just so I have it. And really it's a MUN escape pod, because if I were trying to escape an orbital station around Kerbal, it'd be a lot smaller than this. Don't need nearly that much fuel. But I'd also use small docking ports if I were designing a specific escape pod. This would be a medium docking port. Alright, so now I can put my scientist. What else did I say I needed? I will need to put a payload. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and put the biggest one that I've got. Let's see. I need to put a fuel tank. Let me go ahead and design the fuel tank separately. So, in order to control my fuel tank, I'll need a probe core. And I'll go ahead and hide that in a structural tube. And now let's decide what's the biggest tank that I want to send. This might be the biggest that I have access to at the moment. Jumbo 64 fuel tank. Rockamax Jumbo 64. It holds 2,800 units of liquid fuel. If I recall, my MUN lander's got the TX900 or the TX440. 198 units of liquid fuel. So this should be a huge amount of fuel. Be able to use it for multiple missions. So that'll be the tank that I use. It's not the biggest by far in the game. It's the biggest for what I've got access to currently, and it's all that I'll need for a while. So I will need some power. Let me add some batteries. Let me add some monopropellant while I got it open. Guess a couple of those should do. I want just two. Two should do. I need power source. So photovoltaic panels. Let's see. I can put them in the middle. I'll just do 4 of them. This is where RTGs would be nice. I would hide some RTGs in here so I don't have any external solar panels. This is meant to just be a fuel tank. As a matter of fact, I'm going to color it orange. So I guess I'll put my solar panels out here then. So it looks the part. Big orange fuel tank. What else? I'll need a way to control. And I could clip one of these. Let me go ahead and do that. Maybe not. So what I was just trying to do, and I'll just go ahead and show you. I can connect the bottom of the top of the fuel tank to the bottom of the reaction wheel, and then clip the reaction wheel into the probe core. You can still just kind of barely see the probe core. Problem with that, though, and the reason I'm not doing it is because to minimize the spaghetti effect on the station, you want the fewest components in line with each other, connected to each other as possible. So right now I've got this structural tube connected to the probe core connected to this reaction wheel, the reaction wheel connected to the tank. If I put the tank back on the structural tube, now I've reduced it to 3 components in line as opposed to 4 components in line. So I can connect the reaction wheel some other way to the structural tube, and I won't increase the potential for spaghetti effect, or the Kraken as it's affectionately called. So I'll just put a couple structural tubes in here, and I can snap 2 of the smaller reaction wheels, and those would function just the same as one of the bigger ones. So that'll do. And the structural tubes are very, very light. They add almost no weight. So I've got a way to power this thing. I've got a way to control it. I've got a way to maneuver it. Once I get where I'm going, I'll put the thrusters on last. I'll go ahead and stick one on there just to remind myself. I'll put those on last so that I have all the added weight that I plan to have. And there's my adapter that I'll need. I guess I can copy it in a second. I'll make it orange just so it matches. And I need my docking port. So that would dock to the station nicely. The question is, do I want a docking port on the bottom so that I could dock crafts to it? And I think the answer is no, because the intent is for these tanks to be expendable. I would empty it as I need it and ditch it and replace it with a fresh one from Kerbal. I'm not going to be doing any moon refueling vehicles that can go down to the moon, gather some fuel, and bring it back up and fill up this tank. I don't want to do that. I'll just send a whole fresh new tank anytime I need one. So since it's so big and heavy, I will put 2 sets of RCS thrusters. Again, equal distance from the center of gravity. I could also put a 3rd set on the center of gravity if I wanted to. And actually putting it allows me to kind of see on the side how far apart these thrusters are. That looks a little closer. Might be overkill. Don't know that I need them. I put 2 of the larger monopropellant fuel tanks so that they could supply these thrusters. I'm gonna go ahead and move these 90 degrees, or yeah, sorry, 45 degrees, so they're not clipping the side of the tank. All right, that looks good. Now I've got a fuel tank. I'll call it refueler, run fuel, fuel tank, whatever. I'll just leave it simple. Fuel. How about this? Fuel refit. I like to use refit for anything that I'm sending to a station to provide it with more supplies. So now I just need a way to get this payload into the orbit around the moon. And before I do that, let me go back to my escape pod. And let's see if I had any sort of thing like that. Oh, poop. Let me do something really quick. That's that I'll have to do. I need to reroute my probe core to my pomegranate. So now the pomegranate's the main component of this build. Put my docking port back on. Put this useless thing on top, and it's useless because I'm not going to need it. I'm just using it temporarily to change. Now I'm rerouting from my pomegranate to this. So now all of these parts are considered expendable, and that's considered the core. And I'll go here to my advanced mode, and then under subassemblies, I can create subassemblies. You can't include the core component in the subassembly, I believe. At least I've never been able to do it. So everything connected to it is eligible. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my docking port and this whole vehicle and drag it here as a subassembly, and that's my escape pod. And I could have done this earlier before I saved it as a vehicle. So now I'll go ahead and reroute back to the pomegranate and ditch that. So my escape pod, I can save it in case I ever wanted to come back to it. It's ready to go. So now let me open my MUN fuel refit. Right, there it is. And I know I'm going to need a lot of space. Drag it up here. Let me drag it in here for a quick second and see where I'm going to place it. Where am I going to place my escape pod? I'll probably put it on top of the fuel tank to send it to the MUN. And I'll need a decoupler. Probably the biggest diameter that I've got, if I had to guess. And honestly, I don't know that I need to flip anything. I like this with the one exception that you need to be very careful with your probe cores and command modules and the orientation they're facing. Right now, if I were to launch this vessel, I would assume the probe core in the original vehicle, which is the MUN refit, which is in this structural tube here, is the default control point, and it's facing up. which is normal, which is good. These are facing down, so if I were to control the vehicle from either of these two control points, I would I would immediately flip the vehicle on launch, and that's not a good thing. So I should be able to control the vehicle from the probe core in here. Unfortunately, if it's not set and I go to launch, I'll have to clip my camera into here to see the dang thing. That's why I really like the larger diameter probe cores. I would put them in line up here and I'd actually be able to see it. The one that's hidden in there, as I said, is hidden, so no bueno. So I'll put my scientist in there. I'll be able to decouple this when I get to the station and maneuver my escape pod using RCS, maneuver my fuel tank using RCS. So the top section of this looks good. Go ahead and build my fairing. Looks like the only thing sticking out from this is the RCS thrusters. They're not sticking out very much, so I can hook the profile of the vehicle all the way to the top. And there's my moon refit plus escape pod. In the future, I'll just delete the escape pod off the top of it and just in the top section. All right, so I'll need a lot of fuel to get this thing into orbit and to transfer it to the Mun. So let's just slap some engines and some tanks and see what we're going to get. So the skipper, I don't know off the top of my head the efficiency of these larger engines in atmosphere. I've got a chart in Google Docs that'll tell me, but in general, I know the Poodle is incredibly efficient, but I don't know that it's going to be strong enough. Let's make sure we're in vacuum. Make sure our staging is correct. Actually, put that there. So 1,000 meters per second. That Poodle's is going to give us 1,000 meters per second. So as long as I can put the Poodle fully fueled into orbit, that's more than enough to get me to the Mun and circularize. So I just have to make sure my core stage is good enough so that I don't have to use the Poodle to circularize, or very, very, very little. So that'll be a challenge. So now let's slap on again my largest decoupler, and then largest fuel tank. Might as well extend it and add a mainsail. So with engines, you've got the choice between SRBs and liquid fuel engines. It's just a matter of experimenting and preference and getting the thrust to weight that you need and getting the delta V that you need. So in this case, I may do 2 solid rocket boosters and 2 liquid fuel, or maybe 4 solid rocket boosters and 2 liquid fuel. First let's copy this whole assembly, and we'll use these radial decouplers. Put the SRBs there. Kind of want the bottom of the engines, the nozzles to line up, although they don't technically have to in this game. The mainsail would probably hold the weight of the whole vehicle assembly above it. So that'll do. Let's see if I'll get any clipping issues with this diameter tank, having 2 of them there. Just looking to see. Oh, clears it. So I may go with that. What is that? That's some strange symmetry there. Very strange. What happened? Okay, I don't know what just happened. That's better. Okay. So let's start topping off all these things. I put some nose cones on there. I need some nose cones. Is this the same diameter? Yep. Rotate. SRBs are just for raw thrust. These 2 liquid fuel boosters are for keeping the center core, the center core out, redundantly the core stage fueled. Oh, that's not nice. That doesn't look too nice. See if I can get a little. Whatever, that'll work. And I'll also go ahead and put some wings. Swept wings out here wouldn't be bad. And last, these are going to ditch. I'm worried about my reaction wheels being too small up at the top. This is going to be way too much mass to control very efficiently. So let me go ahead and finish with my bottom stage. You don't usually put reaction wheels on the bottom stage because the gimbling in your engines allows you to control the vessel, plus the control surfaces that you put. But once you're in orbit, you need. Poop! Didn't want to do that. I don't like moving the tanks, but so long as my toggle snap is off, it's not set to. Was that a hexagon? As long as it's not set to that, the parts don't drag unintentionally. When you do have it set and you click a part and you go to move it, it snaps very weird. It's very rigid, but that'll be fine. Okay, so now they're all pretty well lined up. So let's put all my engines on the same stage now and see how much delta V I got. So 2,000 roughly delta V so far. What's going to drain first? I bet you my SRBs are drained first. Yep. When I ditch those, I get 62 meters per second, and then when I ditch the outer two, I get 1,400. Let me move the SRBs after. Yep, and they're not giving me any additional delta V in this configuration, so that means they will be empty. So SRBs empty first, and the two liquid fuel boosters on the outside will empty second. So I'm gonna add some struts. Should have added them before I. Usually I'll put one booster on, do all the additions that I need, and then I'll set symmetry and I'll snap it and get as many boosters as I need. In this case, I didn't do that, so the snap shouldn't give me any trouble though. So it is hard to see things like this, so try my best to put some struts. Struts do create a lot of drag, but I've got so much thrust, not going to be an issue. Very tall, cumbersome looking payload. Thankfully the top section is a lot less mass than the bottom, so don't think it should be too spaghetti like. Anything else? About time to give it a try. I know it's going to be tough to rotate once I'm in space because again the mass. Oh, I know what I can do. And this is not something that would be realistic. I could add a few of these here because I've got decouplers. I'll end up ditching those. They'll just float around in space. That's going to give me a lot more control of all of this. The best thing to do though would be to connect these somehow down here to the transfer stage. So I could add a structural tube in there, but I don't mind doing this. I'll just have a little bit of space debris once I get to the Mun. Alright, let's go ahead and save. Make sure my staging is not set correctly. So those radio decouplers go there. Which decoupler is that? Way up top. Don't need that decoupler anymore. That's my spark engine. Go ahead and isolate my spark engine on its own stage. Toss it up there. Finally, okay, yeah, good. Finally, so those two boosters will separate. That'll separate. Fire my engine. I typically like to put my fairing before a decouple. So the fairing will go, then it'll decouple and fire the poodle. And lastly, There's my pomegranate. Yeah, so what's this decoupler here? Ah, okay, so once I get to the mun, I will need that decoupler. So everything should be set. Hopefully that didn't take too much of your time. I can already see an issue that I'm about to have, but let me pick my scientist. Carol. Carol has not been to the mun. And let me go ahead and see. Too heavy, I bet you. Yep, 341 tons. Currently only able to support 140 tons. So let's save this and exit and upgrade my vehicle assembly building. I got 2.5 million credits. I need 845,000. My part count will now become unlimited, and my action groups will be customizable. I think the mass is actually for the launch pad though. Let me see. Yeah, 140 tons. So I need to upgrade the launch pad. So now the max vessel weight will be unlimited. And I'll tell you what though, I've got the income. I'll upgrade the vehicle assembly building now so that I don't ever have to worry about it. I think technically since my vehicle's finished assembly, I could have gone straight to the launch pad and loaded it there, but I'm just so used to coming into the vehicle assembly building. I've got my scientist. Do I want to use this as a chance to send another crew member? I'll have a pilot and a scientist. I'll go ahead and send an engineer. Engineers are pretty useless at this stage of the game, but they do have a few functions. Doesn't hurt to have one. That'll give me 3 Kerbals with a escape pod that sits 3, so go ahead and send Milbury. He's never been to the mun, so I can put him in the lander and send him on one of the missions if I'd like. All right. Will it fly? Some people like to put the docking clamps, the stability enhancers. I don't typically, but I'll go ahead and throw on a couple. Put here, drag all this down, just because it looks better. Right. Technically, for them to function, I should put them in their own group, put them right after the engines. I don't use those stability enhancers almost ever. Launch. Let's get this done. I'm gonna go ahead and speed up time for you guys so you don't have to see the whole ascent, and I can hopefully just show you me getting to the mun and docking with my space station. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and speed up time a lot. You guys have seen these launches before. While this is going on, I can go ahead and tell you about a design flaw. The poodle stage, the second stage, which you're going to see here in a second, is definitely under engineered. Doesn't have enough fuel to circularize my orbit here, transfer me to the mun, and then circularize at the mun. So I'll go ahead and transfer some fuel out of my orange tank into the second stage, which is not ideal. When you're sending a fuel module to a station, you want it to be fully, you want it to be full when it gets there. So I'll definitely have to modify my design if I'm ever going to send another one of these tanks to the mun. But it does a job. It's got more than half the fuel when it gets there, which is enough for what I need to do. All right. So there I've got my approach with the mun. Got my maneuver node in a minute and some change. So not too worried about burning right at the maneuver node or splitting the burn before and after the node, because I'm going to have to adjust my orbit anyway. Needed to adjust my inclination and so forth. So go ahead and start slowing down. Get a nice circular orbit around the mun. I'll continue to use my Poodle engine until I get really close to the station. Then I'll transfer whatever fuel I have left back into the main tank, ditch the engine, and use my RCS the rest of the way. Poodle is going to continue to get us closer to the station. I'm going to resist the urge to jump to the cockpit view so that it doesn't switch my control point. Oh, when you see the camera shift like that, means, I think it means usually something's happening in orbit. I believe in this case I'm really close to circularizing. Now I'm officially captured around the moon. Burning after reapsis. Close enough. Still a relatively efficient burn. I'm going to go ahead and stop now because I want to start adjusting my orbit and changing my inclination and so forth. So I do want my orbit to be bigger, bigger, the diameter to be bigger than the target's. I guess it's not technically a diameter if it's not a round, perfectly round circle. But I want my orbit to be bigger so that I'm traveling faster so that the orbital station will catch up to me. And that is a pretty decent gap to close. So I think that'll be a big enough orbit that it'll catch up to me in maybe 1 or 2 passes. And I'll need to shrink my orbit by that point. Let me go ahead and change my inclination. There we go. And when you see the ascending and descending nodes swap places, that's where they're going to be at 0. Let me go ahead and time warp to that node. Do that quick 2-second burn. I need to go ahead and time warp a little bit manually so I can get closer to the node. Oh, forgot to position my craft first. So now I'm past the node, but no big deal. My probe core is not able to snap to that anti-normal marker for me, so I have to manually tap my keys, try to get lined up. Oh. Come on, you. Won't be 2 seconds, it'll be a little longer. Let's see. 0.1, that's close enough. Okay. So now let's warp there. We'll go retrograde. I know why it was fighting me. I wasn't snapped to stability assist. That's why it was fighting me. It was trying to go retrograde while I was trying to go towards anti-normal. Right, so now I'm just trying to close that gap as much as I can. A little too much. Let's go back a little. That'll do. Okay, so if I warp here, target will be, right now it's that far from me, and it'll be slightly closer. So I'll definitely need to go a couple rotations around the moon. Tell you what, maybe just the next rotation will be enough. So I'll slow down. Let me time warp to there. And it'll start to flip retrograde, because I know that'll be my next maneuver, will be to burn retrograde to slow down. Because I want my orbit to shrink in a second here. So right now it's about 98 kilometers from me. On the next pass, this target indicator will move really, really close. And if I can adjust my orbit and get it so that we rendezvous on the next pass, I'll do that. If not, I'll do it on the second pass. Oh yeah, that's nice. Okay, so we're gonna rendezvous on this next pass. And now I'll probably use RCS to get that as close as possible. 1.3 kilometers. 1.1, 0.9, 0.8, 0.5, 0.4. That's close enough. We'll be 0.4. We'll be 400 meters from each other. Let's go ahead and warp there. Now I'm going to change from orbital maneuvering to maneuvering in relation to the target. Continue to point retrograde so that we're canceling out our relative speed to each other. And there it's passing. So go ahead and use my engine for that. My poodle. I'll probably ditch the poodle now. Let's quick save. Let's transfer the little bit of fuel I've got left in that tank back to where it belongs. Alright, don't need the poodle anymore. But let's go ahead and make use of the energy that's about to take place. I'll go ahead and point towards the target while I do this, and I'll decouple my poodle. So the poodle's moving away from the station, and I should be moving slightly towards the station now, ever so slightly. I should be able to use RCS the rest of the way. Let me go ahead and decouple my escape pod, and we'll dock the escape pod first, and I should be pointing, this should be up and that should be down. So if I thrust within the N key on my keyboard, it'll push me further from my fuel tank towards my space station. Let me go ahead and set that as my target. I can even go ahead and activate my, no, I'm going to leave my engine deactivated. So what you don't want to do is once I'm docked with the space station, and if I forget to deactivate the engine, anytime I go to use the engines on the station, it'll throttle up this engine as well, so I might as well just leave it. Alright, so got my RCS, use my RCS thrusters to get me even faster towards the station. Got plenty of monopropellant. I'm heading towards the station at 2 meters a second, which is good. If you wanted to, you could look at the map, and we're going to be practically touching at that point. So what's nice about RCS is I don't have to flip my whole craft around to slow down. I can just use the thrusters in the opposite direction. So which docking port do I want? I'll probably dock this one on the opposite side as the lander. So I'll go ahead and start to slow down now. There's my port. Okay. I want to go that way for a hot minute. I'll point prograde to the target. I'm going to pass over the docking port roughly. I'll slow down. Then I'll point at the docking port. That's close enough. If you really wanted to, if your crafts are very large, you need to line them up more precisely. I might as well do that now just to show you that it can be done. But technically, if I'd have just from that position would have moved towards the docking port, it would have hit slightly misaligned, but it would have naturally lined itself up. Because my escape pod is so light. Oop, turn off RCS so I can just use. Let's see. There's target. Okay. Let me make sure I am controlling from here. Just you see how it moved this slightly. So if your craft is really small, or if your probe core is very far from your docking port, it helps to align. So because I don't have a probe core that can align directly to the target, and I can go ahead and show you this way anyway. I'm not pointing at the target. The target's off from my center. I'll use my RCS to push myself. Let's see. There we go. And again, it's really important to have your RCS thrusters on your center of gravity. Otherwise, these little maneuvers would not work like this. You'd be flipping and spinning in crazy directions. Let's see. That's better. Tell you what, so I'll just. So I'm not even looking at the craft anymore. Now I'm just bumping the RCS thrusters until my prograde lines up with my target. And boop, we're docked. And after 10 seconds, my contract should. No, I'm sorry. My pilot earlier is what gave me the contract. So let me. I'll go ahead and dock my fuel tank real quick, and then I'll come back and show you the whole purpose for the scientists being here. So I'll leave these. I'll leave those control reaction wheels for a while, although they may slightly throw off my center of gravity. I don't think it's going to hurt too much. I'm kind of moving away from the target right now, so let me use my thrusters. Actually, I was moving towards the target. Nice. And now I'm moving towards it a little faster. So let's go ahead and grab my docking port, control from here. When I get there, I'll decouple the node. Might as well keep the reaction wheels for now, since they're helping me spin this giant tank around. Tank's still more than half full, so all in all, not a failure. I would adjust my design in the future. Right, let's just slow down. And I'm going to dock this on the front over there. Which I may end up placing a module between the station and the fuel tank, but for now there's nothing there. I'll go ahead and stick the tank right there. Oh, too fast. All right, go ahead and let's decouple now. Space debris, big no-no. Don't ever do that, kids. All right, now I'm pointing at the targets. Is that docking port? Yeah, okay, I'd already selected the docking port. So I'll face the right orientation, even though my target and my reticles are not aligned. And again, I'll use my thrusters to push me. And I'll watch as these two float together, or I could watch as the two crafts kind of align. And as they start to align, I start to slow down. Okay, now I'll line up my prograde marker with my target. Tap the H key a few times, and now I'm moving towards the target at half a meter a second. Turn off my thrusters real quick and just use my control wheel to point my craft at prograde. So we should touch ever so gently and dock. Don't need to have that selected anymore. And that should work. So tempted to time warp. But gotta be patient. This fuel will be very nice for the missions to come. Boop. Nice. Didn't even bounce off of it at all. So now our station's got a lot of fuel for our lander, which is fully fueled already. Got some fuel down here. So typically what I'll do, sometimes I'll empty this into that tank, and this will be like a reserve, and then it'll make it appear like I have less fuel than I have, so I can always replace this tank, and this will just be as a backup. It's nice to have some backup fuel, but both of these tanks are huge compared to these, so I've got lots of fuel. If I wanted to use my escape pod to go do something, or my lander, I can come back, refuel. All right, so why do I need a scientist? The scientist is in the escape pod. The scientist's name is Carol. Let me transfer Carol to my science lab. Go ahead and view Carol. There's the 3-story science lab. All the experiments and stuff in here, or the equipment at least. In the science lander, before I came to the MUN around Kerbal, I had ran a bunch of experiments. So there's one piece of data there. EVA report. It's worth no science points right now. If I recover it, it's worth 0, and if I transmit it, it's worth 0. But now I have a new button. Process in the lab. 8 pieces of data will become 40 science points. Time per 8 pieces of data. I don't understand what that /8 data. 148 days basically. So I'm going to add this useless report to the lab. 8 data becomes 40 science points. So I should have 8 data points now in the lab. Yeah, 8 data. We'll call them points. I can only hold 750 data points in the lab at a time. So let's see, that was my EVA report. Now I should have a mystery goo. Let me review that. 50. 10 data points. Yeah, we'll take that. I also took a temperature reading. So let's review my temperature. There's 8 more data points. Did you get the picture? Review. I don't think the seismic deal has any data. No, you can't log seismic data while in space. This one should. My magnetometer. Review that. Wow, that's a lot more. So that'll do for now. I will select my science lab and start research. So now, no matter what I go and do, this lab is conducting research, which is great. I can come back to it later, transmit the research back to Kerbal, and right now I have 0 science points, but it'll get up to 500 science points pretty soon. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, hit that like button, leave some comments, and let me know if you like the style where I record the audio while I play as opposed to after the fact. I feel like this is more of a traditional Let's Play format. So hope to see you guys soon. Appreciate you tuning in. Bye-bye.